I'm Rob Shields, and this is Peace Talks, the podcast that covers everything to do with competitive jigsaw puzzling. As the brand experience director, Linda Maxwell has been shepherding the Cobble Hill brand along for more than 10 years, doing everything from launching its first website to sponsoring teams and events like the U.S. Nationals. Linda Maxwell, thanks for joining Peace Talks.
Thanks, Rob, for having us. It's a pleasure to be here on your show and thankful for the invitation.
Yeah, it is absolutely my pleasure. As the brand experience director at Cobble Hill, I've got a ton of questions for you. But let's begin at the beginning. What's your earliest puzzle memory?
Oh, that's a good question. My earliest memory is probably, I don't know what age I was. I remember the house that I lived in. So it was probably about between 9 and 12. And it was this really difficult puzzle. I don't know if you remember, I think her name is Ann Geddes. And I don't know why I did this at that age, but she made puzzles of babies in either flowers or vegetables. Do you remember this?
I don't know.
No. Okay. So she was really popular. She did calendars and other things. So there was this one puzzle of a cute little chubby baby inside of with all these pink rose petals and a bed of rose petals. And it was looking up and laughing. Why I had this puzzle, I have no idea, but it was impossible to do. That was my first memory, was not being able to solve the puzzle. I wish I could brag and say, and I did it. I could not do it. It was so hard.
Do you recall if it was like a large piece count, small piece count?
It was probably around 700 pieces, maybe. I think it was fewer than 1,000, but it wasn't. I mean, it really belonged in like a 300 piece count category. I don't know if my parents got it for me and thought I was smarter than I was, but it was really hard. But it was so cute, and I loved all of her artwork for some reason. I don't know why, but I just thought the babies were cute, and I loved all they had some babies that wore cabbage hats, and they were inside of cabbage leaves.
Yeah, this is sounding familiar.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to date myself, but it was a long time ago. So,
I was going to say, you're younger than me, so we may have a little disconnect there.
Yeah. Well, it was my first puzzle. It was not a successful experience, but I still enjoyed trying to figure it out.
And so did that put you off of puzzles for a while, or were you much into puzzles at all?
I don't think it was that I don't think it put me off, because I think I don't remember doing any other jigsaw puzzles until probably my 30s or something. So it didn't put me off. It's just that I think I preferred more logic type puzzles. So I like crosswords or, Sudoku didn't exist back then, but anything that was kind of, back in school in fourth grade, I grew up in California. So back in fourth grade, we had these programs called GATE program, where you would, you take a test and you go into the special classes and stuff. And I always, ever since I took those tests to get into that program, I loved those types of tests. And so that's what I was more drawn to. So any type of magazine that we'd get, they'd have these little tests in the back, and I loved to do those types of things. That was the kind of puzzling I was more interested in.
You ended up at Outset Media, which is the parent brand for Cobble Hill, and they have tons and tons of different kinds of puzzle games. Was that interest of yours how you ended up there, or how did you get from California to Victoria, British Columbia in Canada?
Yeah, that's interesting, actually, because I don't know that it was like a gateway thing, but I definitely, as a kid, I loved to do slide puzzles, where you move. I used to have all those little square ones where you move it 1 through 9, and I could do those so fast, and I loved doing them. And I always played games. I was always making up games. I had 2 older brothers, and so I was always creating a game and saying, play this with me, play this with me. So I did grow up loving games and doing, different types of puzzles, brain teasers, I guess you could say. And in 2002, I got married, and my husband, who's no longer my husband, but my husband, he got a job here on Vancouver Island working for Abe Books, and he wanted to move us here. So I had never heard of Vancouver Island. I hate to say it, but in California, we did not really study Canada. And I had no idea about what Canada was like, or much less an island, a small town. When I looked at the map and I thought, that's where we're going. But, but he lured me at first, though, because he took me on a vacation here up at Yellow Point Lodge on the island, which is this great little camping type resort. It's beautiful. And so I thought, oh, what a lovely little island. And then later he threw it on me. Well, I applied for a job there and I got it, and we're going to move. So that's how I ended up on the island. And initially I wasn't working because I didn't have a work permit as, being a US citizen. I didn't have a work permit, but then through him working, I was allowed to get an open work permit. So because I had been working since I was 13, I love to work. And so I wanted a job. And so I went out and looked for different types of jobs. And I saw this one. It was, back when they still advertised in newspapers. And I saw the job advertisement and applied for it, met with the owner, Dave Manga. And I guess that was the attraction, that it was, games. Yeah. I just thought it was fun. So as soon as I started working at the company, I was brought on as a salesperson. And so that's what I did. But right out of the gate, I made 4 games for the company, and he was willing to publish them. Yeah. So I guess, maybe it did start as a young child, Rob. I don't know. Good question. Thank you for making me think about that now.
Sure. So you came on as a salesperson. You ended up doing some game creation. I had seen your name sort of credited to some games, but I wasn't sure, as a person who does lots of things, I didn't see anything that said game creator. So actually super interested to see that.
There was no credit. We just do it as it's the company. Yeah, it's the company.
Can you tell us what those games were?
They're not in production anymore, but one of
them was collectible.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I appreciate
the Linda
that.
Maxwell collection.
That's right. One of them was called Artifact: The Hunt for Stolen Treasure, and originally I had created the game because I love this European game called Settlers of Catan, and so it was kind of designed with that type of gameplay in mind. But at the time, the owner was making a lot of trivia games, and that was really kind of the demographics that we were focused on. So he had just asked if I could integrate trivia type questions into the game. And I thought, okay, well, that wasn't my intention, but naturally, if that's our demographics, let's do it. And so that's what we did. And it was about returning artifacts to their proper owners and museums and whatnot, or taking it from there. And then the other one was Beam Me Up. It was a space game. I did Camper Damper, which was a game about camping, and Rhyme Time, which was a game for preschoolers with rhyming.
So what year roughly did you start at Outset?
2003.
2003. Okay, so this was pretty early. I mean, Outset had been around for 7 years by then?
And 1996. So in 2026, we'll be celebrating our 30th year anniversary, which is amazing. Yay!
That is amazing, yeah. And so Cobble Hill is a brand. Had it even started at that point?
No, Cobble Hill was established in 2005. So we are definitely, I think that we're a well-established brand, in my opinion, but we're definitely one of the younger brands in terms of all the other puzzle peers out there.
At what point did you get connected with the Cobble Hill brand, or were you there from the very beginning?
Oh, so yes. So what happened was in 2003, we weren't doing puzzles. We were distributing puzzles. I believe we may have even been distributing for White Mountain at the time. I can't remember, or it might have been another company, but we were doing puzzles, but just on the distribution side, not manufacturing. And then in 2005, we decided to create our own brand, and that was Cobble Hill. And I'm a little bit of a joke at the company because even though I started working in 2003, I ended up being pregnant the following year. And I worked up until where it was time to welcome my baby to the world. And in Canada, you get a year off, as opposed to in California, it was 6 weeks. And so I took that time off, but I was still working, kind of doing projects for the company. If they went to trade shows, I made curtains for them for the displays, and I was still doing certain things. But then it happened to be that after my son was born, I worked for a little bit, but then I just really couldn't leave him. I was torn. I fell in love with him more than I even understood a parent could fall in love with a child. And so I ended up being a stay-at-home mom. So then I ended up coming back to the company in 2010, right after my husband and I split. So he gave me a job working in sales again, and that's how I came back to the company and started selling again, but then I went into publicity. I did a number of things.
When you came back, was Cobble Hill part of your domain?
Well, it would just in terms of selling, it was. But then what happened, we have back in 2003, we had a really popular game called Professor Noggin. It was a card game and it's educational based. I love anything to do with education and learning and also the younger generation. So that was kind of something that I really enjoyed focusing on. And what happened was the owner came to me and said, do you want to work for Professor Noggin or do you want to work for Cobble Hill? Because I did love Professor Noggin, I was torn and wanted to choose that, but it was really kind of the bread and butter of the company. It was really well established already. And Cobble Hill, though it was growing and it had a great demographics and wonderful positioning, I thought I could do more to grow the brand. And so that's why I ended up working specifically for Cobble Hill.
So Cobble Hill at the time was established, but had lots of potential.
Correct.
When you got to it, I assume it was a smaller footprint in the world than it is currently. Fewer puzzles being made, perhaps. Like, tell me a little bit about how it was when you officially sort of took it on.
What our company really focuses on, we're a wholesale company. So Outset Media is a wholesale company, and we're the exclusive distributor in North America for Cobble Hill. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And our main focus is really selling to retailers. So that's wholly what we do. But in order to get our brand really out there, I knew we did need a website and we needed to position ourselves so that consumers could see us as well. Because a retailer, while they may take all of our puzzles, they don't necessarily keep them in stock all the time. Plus, they keep a lot of our Puzzle Peers products, on the market. They can't only be touting Cobble Hill, right? It's
weird.
Right. Yeah, I know, right? So, yeah. So we, in order to kind of keep our brand out there and maintain that consistency, we had to have a website. So I built our first Cobble Hill website, and it was consumer facing, and it allowed consumers to come and buy from us. And that way, whether a retailer had a product or, if they were out of stock, we could still provide the puzzle to them because we would have it in our warehouse. And so that's kind of where I started. And then it was back in 2014, around the same time, so, social media obviously existed. And there were a couple of Facebook groups out there that were focused on jigsaw puzzles. And there was this woman named Linda who I became pretty close with. And she had a puzzle group that had, a few thousand people in it. And I thought, oh, wow, a few thousand people, that's pretty great, right? And I can reach these people. So she and I started working together, and I started forming kind of what I call our VIPs, our very impressive puzzlers. And so those were people who did a lot of puzzles and or did something that was impressive in the puzzling community, in that microcosm that was being born, right? And so what I would do is kind of what we call today ambassadors. And that's kind of what my VIP program was back then. And so I started recruiting people where I would offer that if they liked our puzzles. So it wasn't kind of like getting reviews, like, hey, review this puzzle for us. It was, as I'm watching the internet, as I'm watching social media, and I see that people are really appreciating Cobble Hill and the brand and talking about us, I'm thinking, hey, well, if they really love our puzzles, let me help them out financially by offering them some puzzles. And then they have more to share, and it allows them to be able to continue buying our puzzles on their own because they have more money now since I've offered puzzles to them. Or, as far as I'm concerned, to even allow them to have the disposable income to try other brands. Because, there's a lot of brands out there that are great. So I'm not saying just do Cobble Hill. I think it's wonderful that there are a lot of Puzzle Peers out there. And so I started working with them, and Linda was one of them. And then I started recruiting more VIPs to do our puzzles. And that's kind of how I started to grow our brand a bit, because they would share it with their puzzle group, because a lot of them had their own puzzle groups that they were running. And so that they would share our puzzles, or I would partner with them on competitions. So they would say, okay, let's do the Rainbow Collection puzzle. And so everyone would post their pictures, and then I would offer prizes to them. And that's
nice.
Yeah. And so that's kind of how that started. That was back in 2014. And then it kind of grew from there. And then in 2018, there was another gentleman named Gunther, and he lives in Austria, and he had what's called the World Puzzle Days, and he had been doing that since 2013. And I don't know if you know about this, the World Puzzle Days. Okay,
no.
We stopped, and I think 2023, or 2022 may have been the last World Puzzle Days that we did. But back in 2018, it wasn't speed puzzling per se, but what he did was, he ran for about 2 months, this competition, where you would try to play as many puzzles as you can within that time frame and be the number one puzzler. So you would get, you would do, some people did 60 puzzles, some people only did 10, some people, but you would try to do as many puzzles as you could. And the interesting thing about that was that a lot of brands got played. So I love data. So I would get a lot of data from him on who played our puzzles and how we stacked up against the other brands. And it was just interesting to watch the types of puzzles that people would gravitate towards, the different mottos or themes,
Tell
and
me.
the motifs. Oh, well, back then, I mean, there was a lot. We definitely, for us, it was a lot of collages. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but, uh, but it was just interesting to see how, what people enjoyed. And so that was back in 2018, what we started doing, because he had only had one other, I guess if you want to call it, sponsor, and that was Step Puzzles. They're based out of Russia. And so he and I started working together where I would offer prizes and I would send them to Turkey, to Russia, to India, to people in North America. These people who
Wow.
win, right? And so we would
Uh-huh.
do they would get random gifts. So it was not always just the number one player, the number two player, right, who did the most puzzles. Because at that time, it was always this woman named Julie, who is also one of our VIPs. And she always did the most puzzles. So we would offer puzzles to other players for, I don't know, just different topics, right? Or just random draws. And that was one way that we started doing kind of these sponsorships and growing our brand internationally and growing, within the puzzle community. And then at the same time, there was a movie being produced. It had featured at Sundance Film Festival. This was in 2018, and it was called Puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
And it was based off an Argentinian movie from maybe about 8 years prior. And we had worked with them. I had worked with the set deck team to get a lot of our puzzles produced and shipped to New York, where one of their locations was. And they had featured our puzzles as a retail store. And so you would see a lot of our puzzles. Plus, we had sent them some puzzles for hero shots. So, and that was about a puzzle competition. So it was a woman named Agnes who was discovering herself, played by Kelly MacDonald. And she joined with this gentleman to do these puzzle competitions. And just kind of the whole jigsaw metaphor for life, that was kind of that's interesting, these puzzle competitions. So between that and sponsoring the people who did speed puzzling in terms of how many can they do within a
Right.
certain time
Volume
frame.
competitions. Yeah.
Yeah, volume, right, as opposed to time based per puzzle, was interesting, and it opened my eyes to, well, what else is out there. And so that's kind of the start of how we started getting into speed puzzling, and that was kind of the growth of Cobble Hill. The unfortunate part was then COVID came shortly after that. Just as I started to dive into the market and work with different communities who were putting on speed puzzling competitions and doing these other programs on social media, like, puzzle battles or puzzle alongs or different types of events, or they would do themes like, this month we're going to do cookie theme, this month we're going to do trains,
Yep.
those types of things. But then COVID hit and some things shifted in the industry. But anyhow, that was kind of the start. I don't know. I could go on and on.
That's super fascinating. Yeah, I'm just going to kick back and listen to you talk. The amount of history that you bring to the table is impressive. And you thought this wasn't going to be very interesting to chat about.
Yeah, I didn't know why you wanted to talk to us, but yeah.
there's it in a nutshell. Okay, so I want to back up to a couple of things, though. One of the things that you mentioned was that there are a lot of other competitors, especially in terms of puzzle companies that have sort of grown up. So you sort of came of an age with Cobble Hill in two parallel developments. One is the sort of growth of social media as a puzzle related focus, right? Social media in terms of YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, those things sort of blossomed at the same time that you sort of came on board and were leading that. And similarly, there's been an explosion in my personal view of just competing jigsaw puzzle companies. There just seems to there are, like, when I was a kid, you could get one of four companies and that was it. And if you didn't like hundreds of baby dolls or a picture of a cheetah in the jungle, lowly saturated, that's just sort of all you got. Now we live in an age of abundance, which seems pretty recent. So I'm curious as to how those two things have come into play as far as you're concerned. Specifically, I'm wondering if the rise of Instagram and YouTube, the much more visual components of social media, changed your approach to marketing puzzling and if that had an impact on sales? And then how do you live in the world where there are every day hundreds of new puzzle companies competing with you?
I mean, this is my personal opinion. I understand the word competitors. I see them more as puzzle peers,
Mhm.
because I think that you have to have a lot of different puzzles. So okay, so selfishly, because I work for Cobble Hill, if there could be one brand, sure, let it be ours, right? But that's not the best thing for puzzlers. And so, as someone who also likes to think as a consumer or as a puzzler, you want to have different options. And because with the fact that there's random cut, ribbon cut, you've got wood, you've got micro, there's so many different types. Well, our company cannot do everything. We cannot be everything.
Mhm.
So having these puzzle peers, I think, is important because puzzlers need to be able to have options in order to let the industry continue to grow and survive. Right. So if we want to thrive as an industry, that's how I see it. Having the ability to allow puzzlers to choose from different brands and styles, the different themes, I think is important. So for me, is it competition? Okay, sure, you could see it that way. I really see us as puzzle peers, though, who are doing our best to offer the community as much as we can to allow them to enjoy puzzling. And has it cut into our sales? I don't think so, because the trajectory continues to go, right? So we're continuing to grow. It's not. I haven't seen a decline in our sales. Everything seems to be on an upward path, and so. For me, I think what it does is, and especially, okay, let's say we all know that there are some brands that are not as high quality. And some of that is intentional. I know for us, we also manufacture Jack Pine puzzles.
Yep.
Okay, well, that is for the cost conscious consumer or retailer. So someone who needs to sell, who needs to have limited shelf space and they need to sell lower price point products, we offer Jack Pine because it allows them to sell a puzzle that is affordable for their market. And because it is more affordable, that means the materials might not be as high. We still think that it's quality, but it may not be as high, right? But sometimes you have these brands that, at the dollar stores, maybe they're like $3 or something. Are they the number one best quality puzzle? Maybe not. Does it compete against us? Not really, I don't think, because it might be a different type of consumer, right? It's not someone who's looking to have a puzzle that lasts a lifetime, or that they can do over and over, like a speed run type puzzle. It's
Right. It's
just
a good
something that they
gateway
want to.
puzzle.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't really see them as competitive, and I don't see that it's necessarily eating into our profits or anything. And I don't see it really taking away from our audience. I also think that there are smaller companies who really can only do smaller batch cycles. So
Sure.
they're not going to be able to compete at the volume that we produce puzzles, because we produce at a pretty high volume. And you'll get some of these companies that will maybe produce, 600 of an image in a year. And so, yes, they might seem like they're flooding the market, but their reach is not going to be as big.
You've talked a little bit about how speed puzzling sort of organically came along with all of the other things that you've been exploring in terms of people that you could make relationships with and support in the community. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more specifically about speed puzzling and how that developed over time at Cobble Hill. And I'm specifically interested in like how that leads up to whatever you consider sort of the first major speed puzzle event sponsorship that Cobble Hill ends up involved in.
That's an interesting question too, because it has been kind of a road. It wasn't like it was an evolution, I'll say. So just referring back to 2018 when I started working with Gunther from the World Puzzle Day, I think it might have been around 2019 at this point, we started to sponsor him in a different way. So before it was kind of where we offered puzzles to the winners, kind of like what Step was doing in Russia. And then it evolved into, well, we gave him money. We sponsored him in a different way financially to
Mhm.
allow him to let other competitors join the competition for free, because he would charge, I don't know, I think it was maybe $10 or something to play in his competition. So it was like the first X number of players could sign up and play. So that was kind of our first sponsorship, I guess you could say, for a speed puzzling, not a speed puzzling, but a
competitive puzzling, yeah.
competitive performance puzzling, right? Type of thing. And the interesting part of that is that the World Jigsaw Puzzle Federation, the organization, right, that we
Yep.
know, what I was told by Gunther back then, and I think it was 2019, said that the Spaniards had reached out to him saying that he couldn't use World Puzzle Days
Oh, interesting.
because it was going to compete with their name, because the word world, I think, was in there, and with puzzle, that he was to change his name. They had asked him if he could change his name. And so he did. So he ended up changing it to, I think, Puzzles Paradise or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was, but he did change it. And so that was interesting, because then I thought, oh, who are these people just saying, and so I kind of looked into that. And so then I thought, oh, this is interesting. And that's kind of a little bit of where the seed started for me in terms of reaching out or kind of getting involved with speed puzzling. That was kind of our initial sponsorship there. And then we did that for a number of years. We did that, I think, up until 2023, which is when Gunther was going to retire the program for a little bit. And I think it might have been 2021 that we started working with Jonathan from speedpuzzling.com. Yeah. So I started doing sponsorships with him. And, he and I had negotiated different things in terms of when we would outright sponsor versus when, we might give him a discount to purchase in bulk. And that was probably the biggest, I guess the thing that really kicked off speed puzzling, just that super focused attention on speed puzzling specifically, as opposed to performance puzzling in general, with these other competitions and these other social media things that we were sponsoring, events that we were sponsoring. It was really with Jonathan that I had created a relationship with. And I guess that's where we started.
And that would have been during COVID, or
yes, it was during COVID. So here's the rub, for me anyway, as someone who really wanted to grow the brand and focus on reaching the demographics and also just the joy that I get of watching people enjoy puzzles in a niche way. You can enjoy puzzles just as puzzles, which is probably the majority of our demographics. They're not speed puzzlers. That's a very small percentage of people who do our puzzles, right? But it's a lovely and a beautiful percentage of people, and the community is amazing. But the rub was that as I started to get into, it wasn't just speedpuzzling.com, because I was already doing this kind of pay to play program that I had. That's what I was calling it. And it was basically, we would get certain things like the American Legion or certain youth groups that wanted to do puzzle competitions, but they couldn't all afford to just outright pay for them at retail. So what I would do is I would give them a pay to play. So if you're going to buy images in bulk, as opposed to onesie twosies, unique images, because the very important thing is not to compete with our retailers, because we are a wholesale company. Right. So I can't have people buying discount puzzles one-offs when they should really be buying them from our retailers and supporting our small businesses that we mostly work with. Right. But if they wanted to buy in bulk for an event that they could show me it was an actual event that they were advertising, or that they were, that they were doing, that I could legitimately see was being done, then I would offer them a rate that allowed them to be able to make a profit, because they were doing it, whether it was for, fundraising or, you get the idea, right? So that's kind of what I started to do for these smaller speed puzzling events, where maybe they were only doing 10 puzzles or 20 puzzles. It wasn't, 50, 60, 100 at a time.
And were these pre-COVID? Were these?
This was kind of, yes, it was kind of pre-COVID. So this is the thing that was unfortunate. It was beautiful, but unfortunate at the same time. So I started doing these little events, working with, even libraries or, and oftentimes with libraries, I would donate them. Then COVID hit, and all of a sudden people wanted to do lots of puzzles. It skyrocketed big time, right? So it was amazing to see that. It was so lovely to see that. But at the same time, like around, let's say 2021, where COVID was still happening, I was working with Jonathan, and, if he wanted 50 to 60 puzzles, it became a little bit more difficult to give those puzzles to him, either at a discount or even to donate, if he was doing kind of a major event, because we had to still supply puzzles to our retailers, and manufacturing was a little bit more challenging because the demand was so high. So it was like, you have this wonderful opportunity to reach a lot of puzzle people, but your supply was limited. So it was kind of that supply and demand weren't lining up properly. So that was a little bit of a rub at the time because I wanted to just go, go, go and really allow all these people to run their events, but I had to turn so many people down because it wouldn't have been fair to all the businesses that were struggling, that wanted to stay in business and
Yeah.
provide puzzles to their customers, right? So,
Yeah. And I have to imagine that producing puzzles must have been more challenging under like COVID
oh,
lockdown regulations and
it was tough. It was It was tough. It was one of those first world problems, though. You have to say where it was great to have that kind of supply and demand issue.
mhm.
It's
Oh
a
darn,
good
everybody really wants
eh,
your product.
exactly. You can't really complain. Yeah, exactly. So it was wonderful, but it was a challenge because here I am trying to kick off a program with speed puzzling and work with all these people in a market that I saw was growing, and yet I was limited in what I could do because I have to be considerate of our retailers, right?
Mhm.
So that was interesting. And now even, let's fast forward to current times. It's amazing to see how many people the problem currently is that everybody wants to do speed puzzling. I mean, it's like we can't really even keep up with the number of inquiries that we get to run events because we're getting them left, right, and center. So it's everyone from those puzzle groups who are established, like the speedpuzzling.com, or,
Yep.
we have all the different clubs, with USAJPA doing their different clubs now. And it's not only them who have kind of been wanting to do them or doing them. You've got community groups. You have, moms who just have mommy groups and they want to run a puzzle competition in their neighborhood, libraries, chamber of commerce, schools, our retailers, they're all wanting to put on a puzzle competition. And so, while I say speed puzzling is very a small percentage of what our puzzles are for, I can see that number is growing immensely. So we'll see what it's like. Who knows if it's going to take over, and that will be the focus. More than just onesie twosie. Selling to retailers. For their consumers to buy individually. I don't know.
It sounds like as we speak, currently you don't see that any signs that it is slowing down on the
No,
speed puzzling front.
no, absolutely.
The sense that I get, and you're sort of reinforcing that, is that speed puzzling was just really starting to catch right before COVID got started. Obviously, there were some long legacy competitions out there, but I felt like, we just started to see a lot more of it show up. And then COVID both tamped down the fire and added fuel to it at the same time. Um,
Exactly.
and so I'm curious as to whether your perspective is that like the COVID just sort of changed a trajectory that was already going on, or it super amplified something. Like how did that change in the way that we had time for and the focus of what people spent their time doing? How did that impact what seemed like the very beginning of a movement?
I think when you have issues like that, sometimes it causes us to be more innovative. And then, for example, Jonathan speedpuzzling.com decided he was going to do those Zoom competitions. And so, let's say this was in the 80s or 90s, we wouldn't have had this option, right? But with technology being what it is today, having
Yeah, great
things
point.
like Zoom, right, that allows you to get a little bit more innovative and do things like reach out to people with these competitions and have them still compete in isolation, right? Like you said, it fanned the flames, but it also dampened it at the same time. It was something that we just really had to work through that obviously we came out on the other end in a positive way.
By the time COVID was, for all intents and purposes, over, speed puzzling was off and running.
Yes,
It was sort of well established. There had been some major events that wanted to happen and didn't because COVID had happened, and now everybody
right.
sort of pushed out their stuff. Where did you go once the doors sort of had reopened?
Really, it was, I mean, I'd say, something like the USAJPA when they did their nationals, just kind
Mhm.
of getting involved that way with
Now they did their first one in 22, and I don't recall you guys being involved in that
no,
one.
yeah, not the first one. And then I think it was 23 or 2024. Was it? That seems
24, I think. I don't think they had
Yeah,
one in
yeah, that's right.
23.
Yeah, it was 2024 because I think they were going to do alternating years, and then I think
Hmm.
now it's turned into 2024, 2025, 2026, right? So
Yep.
they decided that they were capable and able to do them yearly. So
Well, they're not doing the convention every year. They're just doing the competition every year, is I think the understanding. Because the convention takes a lot of effort as well as putting on a major competition.
So one of their first competitions, what we did is when we offered timers. So we had sponsored them in a way. I don't
Mm.
know what
Hmm.
bracket it was that we were in, but we had sent timers out inside of their swag bags, right? And we had a table out there that had some of our puzzles, but I didn't attend in person. And then I think in 2024, we sponsored nationals again,
Hmm.
but this time I did go out to the event, and we were there, and we launched new release puzzles, and we did some giveaways and things like that. And so that was probably, so nationals was really our, I guess you would say, major sponsorship for events. So then this year in 2025, I had been talking about speed puzzling maybe very passionately in our company. So whenever we'd have our general meetings, I think I talk a mile a minute. I know I talk very fast, and I'm hoping the people who listen to this will even understand anything I'm saying, because I do realize I speak fast and I should probably take it down. So slow
Most people
down
are
a bit.
probably
But
listening at like two times speed, so they're
okay,
probably
that's me.
it's fine.
I do everything on 2 speed. If there's a 3 speed, I'm excited,
Hmm.
But so in any case, we had did that sponsorship, and I had been talking about it at all of our general meetings that we have at the company, and doing doing like a screen presentation for the company to say, hey, these are the events that we're sponsoring, these are the people, blah blah blah, and talking about it. Nobody understands what I'm talking. They're just listening to me, right? As I go off about speed puzzling in this microcosm that is so intriguing to people, yet a mystery because they're just not familiar with it. Because again, our company is really focused on retailers, right? And so we sell to retailers. Puzzle
Hmm.
competitions, what are you talking about, Linda? And so, but the interesting thing and the wonderful thing, the very wonderful thing is the owner, Dave, has always supported the projects that I wanted to do. So he's been very supportive of whatever it is that I bring to the table, and present to him or pitch to him. And this year, though, he's kind of really gotten into it, which is so fun. I think what happened was last year he went over to Vancouver for an event, just kind of an expo that was happening. And one of our retailers was there, and they were putting on a puzzle competition. And there was a guy there who needed a partner who didn't have a partner. So Dave jumped in with the guy on this 500 piece puzzle. It was at
Awesome.
Cobble Hill. And he tells the guy, yeah, I own the company. And the guy's like, what? I'm not sure if the guy believed him or not,
Hmm.
but he did this puzzle competition. I don't know how, I think maybe they placed seventh or something, and it could have been out of 8 people. I don't know, but it was just really fun for him. And I think he kind of got, when sometimes they say you get bit by the bug type of thing. And that wasn't the first one that he did, because he did a puzzle competition years ago. We did one with Bull and Books, and he did that one as a team event as well. But it was just kind of a passive thing. It wasn't really, oh, this is, he didn't think much about it. But then when he did that one, and then, I came to him with like, okay, well, I want to sponsor these people, or I want to sponsor this event. And, I go to him to just get that final approval on the budget, right? And he would say, okay. And then I think he just started to pay a little bit more attention. And so then this year we did a sponsorship at Origins. We did the Tournament of Pieces,
Right?
and that was a blast. That was a lot of fun. And then after that, we did the Portland Jigsaw Masters, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to say that, I came to him and said, I'd really, the USAJPA and I had some meetings about sponsoring nationals next year in a different way. And it was started out one way, and then it grew into this other to something else, which I'm very excited about. So for 2026, we'll be sponsoring the convention part of nationals. So when you talked about them not doing a convention every year, well, there is a convention in 2026, and we'll be
Yeah.
sponsoring that, and so that's very exciting for us.
That's awesome. You seems like you guys have a lot of interesting things planned for, it looks like, this year's convention. I want to talk all about that, but I want to skip back just a second to Origins. It was the first thing that was on my radar, is maybe the thing that you guys were sort of in charge of, or were the ones that were primarily providing the puzzles for the competition and that sort of thing. Is that the right way of thinking about that?
Yeah, that's a good way. Sure. Yeah.
I imagine you are directly involved in that kind of thing at a detailed level, but is that the right way of thinking about it? Or do you have people that you sort of send off and things get done?
I would say the former. Yeah.
Yeah, you strike me as the person who's doing everything. So
Yeah.
so I'm always super interested to hear, especially from the perspective of people who are involved in making something like that happen, the logistics side of things,
Mm.
because you're bringing, correct me if I'm wrong, unreleased puzzles. And I don't know much about the Origins event itself, except incidentally. But I know for other competitions, national and worlds, the secrecy is actually important. So there's a certain amount of, getting puzzles to a venue in a secret way, keeping them sequestered. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your perspective on that. Is it all pretty trivial as far as you're concerned, or are there things you have to do? Did you have to treat it differently than just shipping puzzles to other places that you might support?
Okay, so for Origins, because we did partner with Jonathan and speedpuzzling.com, right? So
Mhm.
we were the sponsor and he was the host. So we partnered together with him where he could, because I think what happened was he was running the Ohio
That's
state
right.
championships,
Yeah.
right? And so it's kind of two birds with one stone type of thing, right? We're in Ohio around the time that he wants to, so why not work together? We have a great working relationship, so let's do this together. And so that is what we did. He did his relays, which have really taken off. I'd say that he was the one who started this, right, with the
Mm.
relays. And because there were the state championships, it was important to me, as well as Jonathan, to have unreleased puzzles. That's important. If I had it my way, all of these competitions would be unreleased puzzles. Absolutely. Because when you're thinking about who the target audience is, that's the fun part, is not having seen or done the puzzle. And
Yeah,
not only that, but also just that level playing field, right?
absolutely.
Yeah. So, which is important, especially for someone like me who is incredibly competitive. Um, so, so I appreciate those types of desires from our speed puzzlers of
Mhm.
wanting unpublished puzzles. Now, can I convince the company to do that for every single thing? No, it's not going to be possible for everything. But for Origins, the way we approached it was, okay, if we have these people who are getting these JPAR scores and they're coming here for the state championships, those 3 events, the solo pairs teams, have to be unpublished, because that's how you're going to get a level playing field. Right.
Yeah,
For some of the other ones, can some of them be unpublished? Yes. But because with Origins, it's not just 3 events, right? You don't just have 3 events. We had, I think, 9, maybe 10 events or something. 11, I can't remember, but we had quite a few events, right?
right.
So we had to draw from our current collection for some of those. But what I kind of think what makes it a little bit even is that it wasn't, a lot of the events were done in, pairs or teams of 4 or more, and it was multiple puzzles. So when you bring in more than one puzzle, right, that kind of adds a little bit of a level playing field to some degree, because you have 2 puzzles or more. You're not just focused on how fast can I do the one puzzle on my own, right?
Mhm.
You're working with a teammate, and you have 2 or 3, 4 different puzzles that you have to put together. And so, there's a lot of strategy that goes into that. What are you taking, team member? What are you doing? And how are we approaching this? And then with relays, you're swapping. And so the nature of the event, let's say, is what causes it to be a level playing field that I think made it okay to have published puzzles that were already out there in the world. But again, for those state championships, it was very important. And, going to our creative department and saying, oh, I need some unpublished puzzles,
Right?
they understood and appreciated and respected what I was doing. And the owner, gave the approval to create these unpublished puzzles. Did they completely understand the importance of it? I don't know, but I will tell you they do understand now,
Is that
because
right?
yes, they do understand now. Now, this is the year where things are very clear to the entire company about,
What drove that home?
well, partly because when we got to Origins, I don't know. Well, I can share the story, I guess, because it's kind of known but not known. But what happened was we had these backgrounds that I wanted the creative department to create for our booth, because at
Hmm.
Origins you have the events, but then our booth is right next to the events, right? And I
Right.
said, okay, I said, so so they go off and do their beautiful work to create these backgrounds that we had it at Portland Jigsaw Puzzle Company too.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
they're beautiful.
yeah, so you have a library of our puzzles essentially, right? So some are
Yep.
spine, some are face front. Well, when I arrived to Origins, I didn't arrive as early as the setup team. I arrived, maybe a day or so later, as I often do. They set up and then I show up. And when I came there, I'm doing let me film Origins, and so I'm for social media, right? So I'm doing this film reel and I'm like, oh wow, those backgrounds turned out beautiful. And I'm filming it. And then I go down the thing and then I thought, wait, did my eyes just see one of the puzzles being played in the tournament? So I stopped my reel and I went up to the background and I was looking at it. Okay, Rob. So I about fainted uh, when I saw some of the puzzle. Not only was it for Origins, but it was also for the next month.
Right.
And I ran down to the Outset Media booth where the creative team and the others were, because we had Outset Media was there at Origins as well for the gaming portion. And I
Hmm.
ran down there and I'm like, whoa, what happened here? The backgrounds, the images, and the casual response of, oh, but this is Ohio. It won't matter, right? And Portland is, way over in Portland. And I was like, I don't think you understand the microcosm. These people travel. They travel far and wide, for these
Hmm.
competitions, and they're very attuned to our images. They will know. They will know.
And
And
word
so
gets out. Yeah.
we quickly grabbed pieces of paper to go and tape onto the background to hide these images and then we spun it as like, oh, we'll reveal two images at Origins, because two of them, I can't remember if it was two or three images that were being played at the event, and we'll peel the pieces of paper off when, this is a surprise. Oh my goodness, yeah. So that was
I love your marketing headspace.
oh
Like we
yeah,
can
yeah.
immediately make this something.
A
Like
spin doctor, right? So okay, so then what happened was one of the puzzlers the next day came up and was talking to our creative director, and I can't remember exactly what the conversation was, but it was Isa, and they said to our creative director something about the image, and that's when our creative director realized, oh, they are familiar with our puzzles and our
right.
images. They do know, right? And then when Isa came to Portland also, and our creative director was there as well, and I said, "Do you remember Isa? Isa was in Ohio, you know."
I love
and
that you were subtle.
yeah, it's like Isa lives on the East Coast. They were in Ohio and now they're here in Portland, Oregon on the West Coast, So people travel. And then it was like ding, 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 light bulb. And now everybody gets it. Everybody gets it. Unpublished puzzles, super important, must have them, must keep them a secret. So yeah.
I'm overwhelmed by your passion for unreleased puzzles because we don't see them as often as you would hope because I think they're hard, right? Like I'm not a manufacturer, but like coming up with a unique creative design and actually manufacturing that, maybe especially if Cobble Hill is used to producing at a larger scale. So we don't see them as often as we would like. Are you able to just have your creative team spin out unlimited amounts of
I
puzzles?
yeah, I beg. I beg. Please, I need this many 500-piece puzzles. Please, I need this many. Yes, and I will tell the owner, this is happening, and it's really important that we have. And he'll negotiate with me sometimes, as we are doing with the 2026 nationals. But yeah, it's a bit of a negotiation. It's a bit of a dance, and it is hard. And I have to say, I really appreciate our creative team and the owner, because I'll tell you what the challenge is. The challenge is that we have a demographics, or we used to anyhow, that skewed a little bit, 55, 65 plus. Okay.
Yeah.
And they have a tendency to appreciate a particular type of image, right? So maybe a landscape or a certain type of, a certain image, right? And the speed puzzling may require a different type of image because you want it to have sortability. You
Yep.
want it to have blocking, color blocking, right? And so different types of things. And then as well, you want it to either be a collage that can be sorted, or if it's a one scene, where you can pull pieces quickly, right? So that is the challenge in doing speed puzzles, is making it so that it's, I don't want to say advantageous to the speed puzzler, because there has to be a challenge. It's an event. It's a competitive event. There should be some challenge to it. It shouldn't be just, given to them on a platter, right? But it still needs to make sense. It still needs to be reasonable, I guess, for them to be able to accomplish completing that puzzle in a reasonable amount of time. And so that's the challenge of asking the creative team to find images, to source images from artists that are, suitable for speed puzzling, or to create them, to illustrate them. Right. And that's the hard part of doing the unpublished puzzles, is the time it takes to find these wonderful images that puzzlers can appreciate. That's the big challenge. The manufacturing part, sure, yeah, it's going to be a challenge, but regardless, we're going to make puzzles. Where it kind of becomes, maybe, I don't know that it's a challenge, but where it becomes kind of a noticeable thing is that we're making puzzles for events. And the thing about speed puzzling is a lot of them, I don't know if you notice, tend to be 500 piece.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to be a favorable piece count for speed puzzling events, because I think where 1,000 is more of an event is when you have a team. But
Yep.
if they're doing a solo event, the 1,000 piece can take, more time than it's allotted in the event, right? So they tend to be team events, and there aren't as many. Even pairs tend to, a lot of the people, the organizations, the hosts that I work with are doing 500 piece puzzles. So what ends up happening is, where 1,000 piece puzzles was the majority of our category offering, our piece count offering. Now you're starting to see, like, if you look at our numbers, 500 pieces like shot up in the last few years. And I will say part of that, I don't want to attribute all of that to speed puzzling. I would say part of that is also due to COVID, because you get a lot of puzzlers who are, during COVID, as you recall, the general population, I guess, started taking it up as a hobby, and they weren't all interested in doing 1,000 pieces because it was maybe out of their skill level. So a 500 piece could be something that a couple could enjoy together, or that people could do on their own and feel accomplished because they're able to complete the puzzle, as opposed to having all these tiny little 1,000 piece puzzles pieces. So
right. The
I
500 is one that might sit on a table for a week, whereas 1,000 might sit on a table for a month. And that's a pretty different scale.
Yeah. Exactly. And so I think that the manufacturing isn't so much a challenge as it is sourcing images, getting our creative team to either find them or illustrate them. And then really just the fact that so many of the puzzles are 500 piece, and because 1,000 piece is really what the majority of our demographics want. They want 1,000 piece puzzles. It's like, how do you release, 2,500s and 1,000 piece on one of your new releases? It's a bit skewed. So that's probably where I'd say our biggest challenges with tempering, being able to provide puzzles to our retailers for them to offer to their demographics, the people who shop there that want 1,000 piece puzzles, and us still wanting to, like, for nationals, doing quite a few 500 piece maybe than we normally would, or something,
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that answer your question? Okay.
You've not under-answered any question I've asked you.
Okay.
So the challenge, I think, in addition to, is that you don't bring just stock puzzles. At least I've not, the ones that I've seen. I didn't see the ones you had at Orange. Actually, I did, and they didn't look like stock images either.
Oh, no.
They're images that took actual effort. It's not like you're licensing something and you're putting it on a puzzle. So production is really the important part. Like when you talk about making the image, you're really making the image, because I think the ones that I saw at Portland Jigsaw Masters, they all seemed like, you can tell me if this is not true, original artistic creations, right? Like they were actually somebody maybe drew or illustrated or painted or whatever these pieces of work that came through. So it's not, and I'm not opposed to this by any stretch, but it's not like you showed up to an event with some puzzles that have stock imagery on them just to have new images, because new images, I think if you're going to err on the side of new images versus images that are already released, great, use stock imagery. Like often what we care about is, first, is it unreleased, right? To your point
Well,
about
let
earlier
me get
about
my
the
pen and write this down. Tell me what you care about as a speed puzzler,
you
Rob?
no, it's exactly what you're saying, right? Like the thing that you just gave us a sort of impassioned talk about is that, we care first that it is unreleased. Then it gets complicated, right? But at that point, the world in general is sort of starved for competitions where there are new puzzles, and we saw this in Worlds, right? The first few rounds of Worlds were previously released catalog puzzles from Ravensburger. That means that people have wildly different experiences with those puzzles. Like, people have done some of those puzzles dozens of times. And so, to your earlier point about fairness and the level of competition, right? You want to have something that everybody can unbox, have the same level of surprise and awe and excitement, but lack of experience with, so that we can see what it is that people are capable of doing from the onset, right? Capable of doing from a blind puzzle. Heck, I would love, and I was talking with Andrew Bradburn a couple of episodes back, who did puzzles in the 80s, puzzle competitions in the 80s. And in my research for that, I'd seen that there was some marketing material that said that there were original cuts for the puzzles used in the competition. So I would even love to see not just original artwork, but original dies, right? But that's a
Mm.
whole that's a whole nother level beyond,
I'm
right?
with you.
But important is the unreleased nature of it. So I love that you're passionate about that, because that levels the playing field and that helps everybody put something in context, right? Then I can go and grab a puzzle that I, do that same puzzle later and know that if I've not done it before, I'm now competing the same way that everybody else who did that puzzle was.
Yes, so Allegra, our creative art director, what I think she did that was wonderful was for Origin specifically, because it is kind of a game. It's a game convention, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have this tournament of pieces happening at the same time. The themes for the state championships, the unpublished puzzles, Jacob Walker, who is the artist for D20 Dragons, and he actually had a booth across from us. He does fantasy art, so he did all the dragons, and it was on theme for Origins, and that was a 500 piece, as well as we had the Dungeon Run puzzle, and that was an artist from South America who did the puzzle that matched the theme of Origins, right? And Lantern Light, that was one that was a 1,000-piece puzzle that we released, and Allegra worked directly with the artist to say, okay, you have the succulents, or let's say the river, the components like the fish, the koi, or the keys that were inside there. Maybe the color wasn't as blocked as much. So Allegra will, as much as she can, because the artist has to have their artwork. We can, but we don't want to ask them to change their point of view so much. Right? Because it's their art. We want to appreciate and respect their art. However, as in a collaborative sense, we have to compromise with one another. So they might add a little more color to just give it a more sortability, right? So brighten this up with greens, make this a little more blue. Let's make the composition a particular way. And Allegra has a really good eye for composition, I think. And so she works very closely with the artists to do these types of things. Or she may even say, can I use your artwork and compose it myself, create the composition myself, and then get your approval on it, because she's doing something that she thinks is going to be best for a speed puzzler. And so there's a lot of attention to detail that goes into creating these puzzles. So it's not just stock imagery, or not just saying, hey, we like that image in your collection, can we take it? We work with them to make it so that we think it could be relevant to a speed puzzler, as well as enjoyed by the general population, right? So D20 Dragons was one that, everybody loves that puzzle, not just those who did it for speed puzzling. We have so many people who, I know very closely in the puzzling world, who I was surprised when they told me they wanted it, because it just it's not their normal thing that I would see them do. So in a way, I think that's what speed puzzling is doing, is it's kind of seeping in to the puzzles who I would call general puzzlers, the ones who do it casual puzzlers. And that is really kind of a passion of mine, is bridging that gap between the casual puzzler and the speed puzzler, and allowing them to see how they have more shared interests than they realize. So I would like there to be some overlap, because what happens, I know that I am I'm taking a little bit of a side road, but if you'd allow me to just say something really
Absolutely.
quick.
We're all about side
Okay.
roads.
Okay. So the thing that I have to be careful about is on social media, you have a lot of speed puzzlers who are putting up their content solely about speed puzzling. And then you have all the casual puzzlers who just want to share what they've done and it's fun. Well, what ends up happening is because we started to do more of these events that we were sponsoring, and I'm putting up more reels that are about speed puzzling, you can get muted by the general population because they don't care that you scored 33 minutes in your,
Right.
it's not an
They're not
interest to them.
intending to go fast, and
Yeah, they
they're
don't want
often
to see your
intending to
time.
go slow.
That's right. They don't want to see your time lapse. They're there for the zen, right? Not the high stress or, the adrenaline boost of like finishing their puzzle, accomplishing a PB, and so my interest is in bridging that gap to show them that, what, it's not just about what people are doing, but it's about that community. Can we be one community? And just have that microcosm of we enjoy puzzles. Sure, we appreciate them in different ways, just like someone might like a fantasy book versus a, historical nonfiction versus, you know what I mean? But can we kind of still talk about books in general or puzzles in general and appreciate each other and root for one another? And so on social media, it is a little bit of a challenge with doing some of these events because I'm thinking, well, how much can we post about it before people start to mute us? And, then it kind of defeats
Although
putting our
I'm here
brand out
for
there.
the Cobble Hill Performance Instagram account where it's just speed puzzles things.
Yeah, true. Let's get the owner to hire some more people and help me out.
Get on it, Dave.
Yeah. So, and then because trust me, if we had a larger team, I have a lot of ideas. So many things to do, so many things to offer. But it's a resource. It's a resource thing. But yes.
Two quick things. Well, one quick thing and one long thing. You were talking about altering the colors of a puzzle and Allegra. What's Allegra's last name?
Vernon.
Allegra Vernon. And she's the
creative art director, right? Yeah. She heads up the department.
Allegra's got a nice video on the website, actually, about recoloring a puzzle. So if you go to Cobble Hill's website, I think if you dig into some of the details, you can see sort of a puzzle and you can see her sort of recoloring it so that it is more approachable and sortable. And I was like, oh, that's actually really eye-opening when you look at it.
Yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into it because even when when she gets a painting from an artist that we scan, there's a lot of debris on the painting because when you're painting, dust falls on the painting, right? And
I just assume you got everything digitally these days.
No, it's not. She works with a number of artists who work in all different types of mediums, and all of it requires cleanup. So, or lightening and brightening, or, there might be an image we like, but it doesn't enlarge to the size of puzzle that we make. And so there's a lot of thought that goes into these puzzles. It's not just, great, it's a nice image, let's produce it. It doesn't work that way. There's a lot of work that goes behind it. Yeah. And she does a great job.
So with the puzzles that are unreleased that show up at a competition like Origins or Portland Jigsaw Masters or to US Nationals, what's the lead time for something like that?
It really depends because the other issue is what other projects are on the creative department's plate, at the time. And then also what season are we in? Like right now is an incredibly busy season and we have catalogs to get made for our retailers, right? We have to get catalogs out the door. So the creative department is really kind of knee deep in that.
Right. And these are not in your catalog for the current year, I imagine.
Yeah. So, well, for the catalog that's being produced right now, the ones that we're releasing at Nationals, absolutely not. They're not in the catalog because they have to be.
But they'll be in next year's catalog probably, right?
They'll be in next year's catalog, and we'll probably do kind of like an addendum or, something that we give to the retailers to let them know what was released, right?
Sure.
But so the lead time, I'd have to say, can vary because like when we did the speed run, the second annual speed run for USA JPA, that one was done pretty quick. We took a previous image that we had that was done in portrait mode, cut it down from 1,000 to 500, turned it into a landscape mode, rearranged components, and had that done pretty fast for them. We had worked with them on here's a large selection. These are different images. And we had discussions, but it was done, I don't know, fast. I'll just say that. But let's say for Nationals, which is next at the end of March 2026, we've been doing image selections since, I don't know, was it September or something. So, it could vary, Rob. It varies. All of those have to be to print. We'll have to get them sent off to print so that, because what happens is you send them there to the printers. The printers has to create their big sheets, of what it'll look like, because ours are 19
Hmm.
by 26. So they get all of those printed out on their big sheets, roll them up, send them back to us in a tube. We look at them, check them over for any, proofing, right? So we'll have to proof them to make sure they all look like they're supposed to look, the coloring and everything. Roll them back up, send them, say yes or no, and so all of that, takes time too. Thankfully you have fast couriers that can get things shipped pretty quickly, but all of that goes into lead time. So Allegra and I are actually going to be discussing after our phone call today, after you and I speak, we're going to be talking about nationals and going over all the images to see what can we send to press now, and what's almost ready, and et cetera, et cetera. So what are
Neat.
we, end of December, and that's end of March. So 3 months, that's 3 months, right? And
Hmm.
they're not all done. I know that because we have a lot of puzzles.
All right, so we've talked a lot about the sponsorship at a competition level, but you guys have also been sponsoring people, and you guys are the first company that I saw sponsor any kind of individual competitors out there in the world. It seems like it maybe was a natural outgrowth of the program you had already going on, but I'd love for you to sort of draw that arc for me if you could.
So personally, I used to do some niche sports, and in those niche sports, they're kind of like speed puzzling, where it took me to, LA. I would travel to Montreal, different parts of Canada, the United
Hmm.
States, to compete,
Yep.
right? And that cost money. I also had to have specific equipment, and I had to have coaches, and so because it's a niche sport, I understood the cost of that. And so as I'm appreciating speed puzzlers, I'm also appreciating the expense that they have to do, because they're having to buy practice puzzles, right? Or
I've
thrift them.
had many conversations this year about how expensive speed puzzling is, just for all the things you're mentioning. Yeah.
Exactly, right? And so from my own life, I think I drew a parallel, and maybe, I don't know if it's a compassion, but an understanding, I guess, of the world that these speed puzzlers were living in. And, in order for them to really, and me being very competitive, also understood those who kind of speed puzzle, I don't know, casually or just kind of as an event, versus those who did it competitively, kind of at
Yeah.
more of an elite level, right? And really
Right.
wanted to compete, and they care about that number. It's not just speed puzzling for fun. It's speed puzzling because I want the best time, right? And I understand that kind of mentality. So for me, it kind of seemed like a natural fit that if the owner or the company was willing to sponsor people, could we do it? And
Hmm.
so, other than the other things that we were sponsoring people, doing,
Right.
it was the Golden State Puzzlers who we initially started doing as a team. And because I grew up in California, they were appealing to me. I actually did have Sarah Schuler in mind. Before Golden State Puzzlers approached me, I knew that she was going to World, and I was going to ask her because I had seen her and she's, quite energetic. And I was going to approach her to see if we could work together. But then the Golden State Puzzlers reached out, and I started communicating with them, and I thought, okay, how much money can I actually ask the owner for? I better just stick with Golden State Puzzlers at this time, because so since they had reached out before I reached out to Sarah. So that's kind of where it started with sponsoring them. It was just that I understood their need. And on the flip side, does it benefit us? Yes and no, because they were competing at Worlds all the way out in
Hmm.
Spain, right? And, so the agreement was that they would have our shirts with our logo on there. I'm
Yep.
a very super, super low key person when it comes to, I'm not a sales pitch person. Like, I don't need you going around touting about us, about Cobble Hill.
Hmm.
I think it happens organically. If you're out there, you're wearing, you've got our logo on your shirt, that's like, it speaks for itself in a way, you know?
Especially the first time when nobody else was doing any kind of sponsorship visibly.
Yeah. So I personally, if when you work with me, I don't require all these hoops for you to go through a bunch of hoops. Now, I think as speed puzzlers, they're going to feel, and I know this is true because I saw it with Kyle with the stream team this year. They
Hmm.
feel a certain of responsibility, right, to
Yeah.
to do things, which is lovely, and it's very much appreciated. But I am definitely someone who's low key. I don't require you to talk about us all the time and make us a point of every conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the agreement is just really, they're wearing our shirts, they're going out there kind of like a car race, they've got all those stickers on their cars and on their suits, and that speaks for itself, right? So that was the first step into it. And the company did get kind of excited. I talked about it at the general meeting, but again, like I said, because it is this microcosm that they weren't living in that world, I think it
Mm-hmm.
was kind of like okay, thanks for the report, Linda. Know, but yet the next year, the owners still continue to say yes to, supporting them. And so what happens, and it works in different ways. I don't know if you'll ask us if you're curious about it, but it does work in different ways. Like, what are we sponsoring? It's often going to be allowing them to have practice puzzles,
Mm-hmm.
a certain amount of practice puzzles. And I would think that a lot of people would say that we're pretty generous. And I think that's to their benefit and to ours. It works I like everything to be very two-way street. That I think it has to be a
Yeah,
fair thing. That's
sure.
that's always the best way to approach it, right? It can't just be about us. And then there's a financial portion, and Lindsay of the Golden State Puzzlers is kind of their manager, I guess, for the
Lindsay
team.
Steenstra.
Yeah, so I originally started speaking with Allie, but Allie, because she's on the board of the USA JPA, she made it
Mm.
very clear that anything that we do as Golden State Puzzlers will not, and does not affect what we do with USA JPA. And she, like I am, are very capable of putting things in boxes.
Yeah.
This is this box, this is this box, and it's very clear, and I appreciate that. So, but to keep it very clear, I will work with Allie, or I work with Lindsay when it comes to the financial part, and she'll kind of give me a budget, and then we agree on an amount, and I take it to the owner to see what he's is agreeable to him, and that's kind of how that works, to help cover some of their costs, whether it's flights or hotel or the registration fees, stuff like that, and it will vary from event to event and person to person, team to team. Do I have a formula for it? Not exactly. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to say this is what it's always going to be. It kind of is a bit of a negotiation and an understanding between me and the people, as well as what I can pitch to the owner and the benefit of what that sponsorship will do for us. But like what I said about the going to Spain, we didn't have an immense international presence necessarily. We're still growing, but we've got Toys Line as a distributor out in Spain. And so they've been helping us grow our brand out there. But when Golden State Puzzlers initially went out there, the rub becomes, well, how do we get Cobble Hill puzzles?
Yeah.
But because you get the point. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, your parent company, your Outset, has purchased a company who has distribution in Europe. And I was just curious as to whether that was something that was going to help you get puzzles out there beyond the retailers that you're currently working with. Your point exactly right is that if you get people excited about it and they're in Europe, notwithstanding that people in the US are watching the live stream, and it's great that they're getting excited and exposed.
Yeah.
How do you get it into the hands of people who are, because we hear this for the Ravensburger puzzles a lot, right? It's like, how do we get, it's great that you have that. How do we actually get it?
Right, exactly. And Ravensburger is definitely a much larger brand and more available than Cobble Hill, I'll tell you that. But yes, the live stream is a perfect point of why doing something with Golden State Puzzlers in Spain, even though the local community may not be able to get Cobble Hill puzzles, the live stream is really the kick, right? And that's where you get kind of that ROI, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so we acquired Cheatwell, and they're based out of the UK, so they can get our puzzles out there more. We still do the manufacturing here in North America, so there's still a matter of getting the puzzles shipped out to them,
Sure.
and then understanding, projecting numbers of how much do we ship out to them, because they're going to have limited warehouse space as well. But where we're really working is our international sales manager has found distribution in many different countries. And the other thing is we're also supporting, like, in Chile or Peru, we're supporting puzzle companies out there to do speed puzzle competitions.
Oh,
and
cool.
so we're donating our puzzles for their competitions, as well as they're buying our puzzles wholesale to sell and also run their own competitions, right? So that's a way that we're growing internationally. So we are definitely getting Cobble Hill into the hands of more people on an international scale. Can it continue to grow? There's absolutely a lot of room for scalability there. So, if you're a distributor out there in another country and you hear this podcast, please reach out.
I feel like you chose wisely when you had the option of choosing Cobble Hill or the other game sort of area to spend your focus on. Cobble Hill has grown a lot. It's, as you said, it's got a lot of trajectory out ahead of it. There's still a lot of room to grow. I feel like that was a wise choice earlier in your career.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. I go back and forth now because now I did tell the owner, I said, hey, you're really into speed puzzling. Maybe you want to form a speed puzzling committee, a team or something, because he's kind of into it and he could head it up. But, I think that I will always stay in the world. I do have some other project focuses that I really want to do that are still kind of in the world of speed puzzling, but maybe just geared towards a different vertical market. So personally, within the company, I am kind of torn on where I want to focus because I just have so many interests and so many projects that I want to do. And, it does take quite a bit of time when we do sponsor these people because say, for example, Stream Team, when we sponsored them and they were out at Worlds, it's so much fun to watch the world stream. And I like to watch things live, as I like to watch all sports live as opposed to recorded. But the problem is, I work during the day and then I'm up past midnight watching these competitions. And then I have to start work again early the next morning. And then, like with Stream Team, if they're doing something on Twitch and it's at 8 o'clock at night and my bedtime so it becomes a lot of my hours grow, I guess my work hours kind of.
Sure.
Yeah. So,
yeah. And just for people who don't know, the Stream Team is Kyle Cosson and Hannah Doyle.
Yes. And they're both amazing people. And they met them at Origins. And we were so happy to sponsor them.
Yeah, they both are. I'm a big fan of both of them. They're not, as far as I'm aware, they're not pairing at nationals. So was this a sort of a limited engagement with Cobble Hill?
I think because we started doing nationals this year, and that was really a big focus for me. Forming other sponsorships, I guess, kind of wasn't my number one priority for this year. And also because sometimes I get a little bit, I don't know, I get a little bit of like, is it fair for us if we're sponsoring a team that's going to that competition? Is that fair? What's the optics on that?
Sure.
Does that make sense? And so,
yeah.
So like a big part of me wants to sponsor Stream Team, like let's say if they were going, and I don't know, I'm not privy to what their plans are necessarily, but if they are competing at nationals, even though it's a Ravensburger event, because we're running the convention part of it, it's just the optics of it. That's where I get a little bit torn because I like things to be fair.
Although I do like a little bit the insurgency narrative that comes in, like, there's the competition that you guys aren't over the top of, but you've inserted your competitors into the competition. In a Ravensburger event, there's a Cobble Hill competitors. I do love that.
Yeah. Oh, I love it too. But you can let me know if you think it's fair. If the listeners out there can let me know if they think it's fair as to whether or not we have a team that we're sponsoring in an event. Like let's say Origins this year, we're sponsoring Origins in 2026, right? Can I have a team that I'd sponsor to the event? I don't know. Is that fair?
And have you sponsored other folks besides the Golden State Puzzlers in the Stream Team, or have those are the only ones I've seen?
Yeah, that's really it. And with the Golden State Puzzlers, it's either been at Worlds or this we're doing the St. Paul. We're sponsoring them at St. Paul, and so it's more the different events. I appreciate. They're probably one of the longest standing teams, teams because people are always forming with other people, whether it's because of geographics or whether it's because of their
sometimes
competitive
life
nature.
intervenes.
Lots of different reasons why teams change. But Golden State Puzzlers has kind of stayed together for a while. Now, will they forever? I don't know. But we are sponsoring them for St. Paul, and I'm excited about that. Yeah.
Nice. Speaking of sponsorships, I do want to hear more about what it is you guys are doing for the U.S. Nationals this year, because you guys, as you said earlier, you're sort of taking on the convention side of that. It seems like you're bringing a whole host of activities and unreleased puzzles. So I'd love to hear more about the details of what you guys have going on.
Okay, I'll share what I can. Share
what you can't too.
So, okay. You'll just edit that part out, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It'll just be for your ears only, Rob. Okay. So for USA JPA, the Nationals, I have to give a big shout out to them because they are an amazing group of people. They truly are. Not only are they amazing people, but I've worked with a number of different people, hosts who run speed puzzling events. They are extremely organized, and I love it because I'm not someone who's really a very very great. Well, you see how I am about calendaring. It can be difficult sometimes for me to pin stuff down, but
The
they
audience doesn't know that.
okay. Well, you can just edit that too. But the USAJPA, they're so good. They're so organized. They're focused, and I love it. And if they don't have the answer, they're figuring things out. And so we're excited to sponsor the convention part of it, where we will have. There's going to be. They wanted some team relays, so there will be team relays. And then I came up with a couple of other events, which I don't know. People will love them or hate them. I'm not sure. I don't want to give away too many details, but just a little teaser is that. Because I am someone who appreciates the whole point of view, not just kind of like a narrow, like this is my skill set and that's what I'm going to do, but really speed puzzling is growing your entire skill box so that your toolbox is filled with all types of ammunition, right? Because, you know, you've got people who sort really well. You've got people who, can put together edges really fast or do different components of speed puzzling. And so the events that we're going to have, I'll just say, really, I don't know if it's the word challenge or test them or allow them to showcase their skills at communication and strategy. So there are going to be a couple of new events that we're introducing in
I'm
pairs
super
and team.
fascinated. But for the people who can't see this at home, the reason there's silence on my side is because I'm dumbfounded. I literally just leaned forward. Please continue.
I know, and I saw your eyes do this flutter and just.
Yeah, this is amazing. Tell me more.
Well, I can't really say, but one of them's called Cobble Together and the other one is called The Gauntlet. So I will just maybe drop those as hints, but there are going to be different pairs and teams events that require, it's not going to be anything outrageous, but it's just going to be something different that I think will help people to use other aspects of speed puzzling, their other skill sets, to win, I guess. And I'm curious to see how it plays out. I don't know how it's going to go, but I hope people enjoy it. Some people will love it. Some people will probably hate it. And then as far as images go, they're all going to be unpublished. So that was important for us to do that. So all the puzzles that get played in this event will have never been seen. We're doing some puzzles. And I'm not going to give this away because I think that's the charm for people is that they get to be surprised and they enjoy that part of it. But, some of them may be harder than others. And that is just to keep it competitive. And others, we've really kept speed puzzling in mind and we hope that the sortability will be there. But, yeah, I'm excited. So the other part of that is those are different types of events. You've got the team relay, then you've got the Cobble Together, and then you've got the Gauntlet. So those are a couple of games. And then the other thing that we're doing that is really exciting is puzzle chess. Oh, yeah. So we don't actually have 100-piece puzzle. So this goes back to your mentioning of, I wish that everything had a new die. Me too, Rob. I really, because sometimes I'm like, golly, why does that 500-piece puzzle have to be in that die? Why couldn't we, why don't we have like 1,000 dies but the dies are thousands of dollars too, right? So, to continue, it may be something that I can convince the owner of in the future. Like, hey, it's a really good investment to have multiple. We do have multiple dies, but even more so, we should have many, many more dies. But the 100-piece is something that we're creating. It's going to be a new die. So it is something that people haven't done before in the Cobble Hill brand, and it will be presented as for puzzle chess. Now, will all the images be unpublished? Oh, the owner and I negotiated on this one, and I'm hoping that I can get some that have never been seen, but what we came to the agreement on is that because they've never been done in 100-piece and it's so far off from a 500 or 1,000 that we may use some of our images from previous catalogs or something that's in 1,000-piece. So we'll see what happens in the puzzle chess realm as far as images go.
Is there a plan to start creating Cobble Hill 100-piece puzzles for the catalog, or is this specifically for events?
Now there is.
I mean, you've got it hanging around now.
Now there is. I mean, we're paying to have a die custom made. So, So I would say that yes, it's an investment that a road that we're going down now and offering not just for puzzle chess for speed puzzlers and their events, but for the general population and retailers. Yeah.
Now, the Cobble Hill events at the U.S. Nationals are part of the convention pass, right? They're separate
Yes.
from the formal competition part of things. So if you didn't get into the formal competition, there's still an opportunity to compete in other ways.
Yes, and I think that that was something that was really thought about from the USAJPA side, where they wanted to be people who did compete will also still get to do some of the Cobble Hill convention stuff, right? Depending on, I think people don't know what they can sign up for until they see what they've qualified for, right?
Got it. Yep.
So I'm not sure when the USAJPA is going to open up registration, but they'll announce that
for the
more
Cobble Hill
right for the
events.
Convention portion of the event, right? And then we'll also have things that people can, we'll bring sprint puzzles and we'll bring other things out to the competition so that people can use them for practice. And so I'm really excited.
I'm super excited. Yeah, sign me up already. I'm not going to make it in past the initial rounds of anything, so just sign me up. I want to go.
Oh, okay, yeah. So we'll put your name in the hat there for them and tell them you got to give Rob a extra. He's got to be able to sign up no matter what, right?
Yeah, that's right. I want special treatment.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
All right. So we are just about out of time. So usually this is the time where we turn to the speed round, which is typically where I ask a competitive puzzler. And I didn't even ask you if you've done competitive puzzling. We'll just have to leave that as a mystery. Gradients, patterns, or fur?
Gradients, patterns, or patterns.
Illustration or photo?
Illustration.
Jumble or busy versus landscape?
Depends on what kind of jumble you're talking about, but I'd say jumble probably in general.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Round or square?
Oh, I would say these days I probably do more square. When I used to do rounds, though, because Seiko used to put out a brand of puzzles that I did, and they were glow in the dark, and they were all fantasy unicorns that I loved. And so I did a lot of round before, but square these days.
Wood or cardboard?
Cardboard, although I got to give a shout out to Puzzle Lab in Victoria, BC, because they do amazing wood puzzles.
This one seems like a trick question. Ribbon cut or random cut?
What do you think? Random cut all the way. And I'll tell you what, it's not that I don't love a ribbon cut, because I do Gallison puzzles all the time and they're ribbon cut, but it's because I love their images. If they could make them in random, I would appreciate it even more. Yeah.
300, 500, or 1,000 pieces?
500.
Do you have a favorite puzzle?
Do I have a favorite puzzle? Yes. And I hope I can say this without crying. Maybe I cannot. Oh, maybe I cannot. I don't know. It's Terrarium Cat, and it's a 1,000-piece Cobble Hill, and it's of my cat Tilly, who passed away a couple years ago, and I still change her water bowl every day. I love her so much. So that's my favorite puzzle. And the wonderful thing is, speaking about wooden puzzles, Wentworth actually licensed that image from us, and they made it in a wooden. They made her image in a wooden puzzle, and they sent it to us. And so I actually have her in both Cobble Hill and Wentworth, cardboard and wooden. But yeah, that's my favorite puzzle.
It's becoming my favorite puzzle too. That's so sweet. And I'm looking at the puzzle and it looks challenging.
Oh, and it is hard. It was really hard. And let me tell you, I got a half cut of it. So I don't know if you know what a half cut is.
Tell me.
A half cut is when the puzzle factory will, when you have the board, the blue board, where ours is on blue board, and then they take the actual print part, they glue it on top of the blue board, right? That's how it's made. And then after it gets glued, it goes in through the die. So the die is like a cookie cutter that comes down and cuts the puzzle, right? And then after that, it goes into the knocker and then the shaker to get out the dust, et cetera, and it gets bagged. But with the half cuts, the die only comes down halfway on the puzzle board. So, and then it lifts off. So you can actually see the cutout of the puzzle, but you could pick it up as one whole piece.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's all put together. So I do have that as well as the puzzle itself that I tried to put together myself, and a little bit of a challenge.
Well, thanks for sharing that. Is there a place that people can follow you if they want to get more Linda Maxwell content?
Oh, well, Linda Maxwell content is just Cobble Hill Puzzles content. So Cobble Hill Puzzles.
And I imagine Cobble Hill pretty much everywhere?
Yes, it's at Cobble Hill Puzzles on Instagram, at Cobble Hill Puzzles on Facebook. I think it's the same thing on Pinterest.
Pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, Linda Maxwell, thank you for taking the time to spend with me. I've really appreciated this conversation.
Thank you, Rob, and I appreciate it. And Godspeed puzzling to all of those listeners who are out there right now. Good luck at Nationals.
Thanks for listening to Peace Talks. You can follow the podcast on Instagram at peace_talks, and you can send email to peacetalkscast@gmail.com.